Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Kunda Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Srivaradari Gopi Jana Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Srivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Srivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Rama
Koti Vaishnavrinda. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Ramayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagatatam Sahagana Raghunatha Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Savana Lada Shri Krishna He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanususte Devi Pranamami Harimpriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dishatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, what chapter are we reading today? 13. So we have been discussing some very important knowledge about the kshetra. What is a kshetra?
Field activities.
Field.
Which means the body, right? So we've been discussing the body and the kshetragya, which are the knowers of the body.
Yours of the body.
And who are the two knowers of the body?
Jiva and super soul.
Jiva and super soul. So there are two knowers, right? So Prabhupada has told us that having perfect knowledge of the understanding of the body, the jiva, and the supreme, that constitutes complete knowledge. Okay? So understanding that I am separate from this body is the foundational understanding of spiritual life. Knowing that within me, who I am, when I say I, is the spirit soul. I am not this hand. I am not this leg. I am not this body. But I am spirit soul. And understanding I am spirit soul is critical to understanding then the path to finding peace and happiness. Because just like a car and a driver. If one who owns a car is simply trying to make the car happy, but forgets to make the driver themselves happy, what happens? Frustration. So similarly, the spirit soul is residing within this body, which is like a vehicle, Prabhupada said. And the driver of this vehicle is I, the spirit soul. So knowing the constitution of the spirit soul in relation to the body is very important. We don't ignore the body either. It's a very important vehicle to render service. So Krishna has been giving this knowledge in the first several verses of this chapter. And now in this set of verses that's presented here in verses 8 through 12, Krishna is explaining the process by which or how we acquire knowledge. So we know knowledge has value, right? It's important for us. If I know how to go from point A to point B, I can then reach my desired destination. If I know how to drive a car, it gives me some ability to move more rapidly. If I have knowledge of how to use a cell phone, I can tap into its potential. So knowledge unleashes different abilities, different capabilities. But Krishna is telling us what is the process to acquire the knowledge that will give us eternal peace and happiness. Because you can get knowledge at university, you can get knowledge in some different organizations, you can certainly try to get some knowledge on Google. Yeah. But that knowledge will lead to what end? Simply satisfaction of the body, the car, the vehicle. But will not give knowledge of how to find happiness for the self. So Krishna here is giving the processes by which one acquires knowledge for this superior goal. So we'll read this verse and maybe the first paragraph or two of the purport, and then we'll discuss. It's quite a long purport, so we'll probably discuss this over 3 or 4 weeks, all the different components of the purport. So somebody would like to read the verse?
Verse number?
8 to 12.
I'll read. You want me to read the Sanskrit or just the
Just a translation.
bigger pardon?
Just a translation.
Just a translation, okay. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of evil, perception of the evil of birth, death, old age and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever they may be is ignorance.
So Krishna gives a very, conclusive statement. Besides this, everything else is not knowledge, ignorance. So let's read the purport. Somebody else would like to read the purport?
The process of this process of knowledge is sometimes misunderstood by less intelligent men as being the interaction of the field of activity. But actually, this is the real process of knowledge. If one accepts this process, then the possibility of approaching the absolute truth exists. This is not the interaction of the 24 elements as described before. This is actually the means to get out of the entanglement of those elements. The embodied soul is entrapped by the body, which is which is the casing made of 24 elements, and the process of knowledge, as described here, is the means to get out of it. Of all the descriptions of the process of knowledge, the most important point is described in the first line of this 11th verse. Mayi chanaya yogina bhaktir avya vicharini. The process of knowledge determinates an unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. So if one does not approach or is not able to approach the transcendental service of the Lord, then the other 19 items are of no particular value. But if one takes to devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, the other 19 items automatically develop within him. As stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 18, verse 12, Yasvyasti Bhaktir Bhagavati Akanyachana Sarvar Unais Tatra Samasati Suraha. All the good qualities of knowledge develop in one who has attained the stage of devotional service. The principle of accepting a spiritual master, as mentioned in the 18th verse, is essential. Even for one who takes to devotional service, it is most important. Transcendental life begins when one accepts a bona fide spiritual master. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, clearly states here that this is the process of knowledge, is the actual path. Anything speculated beyond this is nonsense.
Let's read one more paragraph and then we'll discuss. Somebody else with it?
I'll read them.
Someone else, right?
Ask for it.
Here. Second verse.
As for the knowledge outlined here, the items may be analyzed as follows. Humility means that one should not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others. The material conception of life makes us very eager to receive honor from others. But from the point of view of a man in perfect knowledge, who knows that he is not the body, anything honor or dishonor pertaining to this body is useless. One should not be hankering after this material deception. People are very anxious to be famous for their religion, and consequently, sometimes it is found that without understanding the principles of religion, one enters into the same group which is not actually following religious principles, and then wants to advertise himself as a religious mentor. As for actual advancement in spiritual science, one should not have a test to see how far he is progressing. He can judge by these items.
Okay, that's good. No. So, how many items are listed here? Anybody know? Right?
19,
No.
20.
20. Right, a little math time. So of the 20, Prabhupada establishes what is the most important of these 20?
Accepting a spiritual master.
Oh, close.
Oh, wait.
Yeah?
Humility. No,
Close.
Devotional service.
Huh?
Devotional service.
A little bit more specific?
Accepting devotional service.
Huh?
Accepting devotional service.
A little bit
It
more.
takes to it.
Unannoyed.
Yes. And one more adjective is given in the verse.
The process
Detachment from
Related to devotional service. What does Krishna
to
say?
the Lord.
Huh?
Unalloyed devotional service to the Lord.
Yeah, but there's one word before that.
Gosh.
The transcendental service.
Transcendental service, yes. And constant. You see in the verse? Constant and unalloyed devotion. Right? You see that?
Yeah.
yes, Prabhu.
So this is the conclusion or the epitome or the summit or the pinnacle or whatever other adjective you want to use of all knowledge, which is coming to the point of unalloyed devotion to Krishna. And Prabhupada says, he says, of all the description of process of knowledge, the most important point is described in the first line of the 11th verse, which terminates in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. Right? So, the spirit soul, it has only one activity in its eternal state. And what is that activity?
Devotional service.
Devotional service.
Devotional service. That's it. That is the singular activity that gives pleasure to all. And it is not a fact of, well, depending on the type of body I'm in, what type of kshetra I have, what time era it is. That is a eternal. We call it sanatana. It is always true, irrespective of any other circumstance. That the living entity's perfection of action is unalloyed devotion to Krishna. And why is that a fact? Why is that the nature of the soul?
Because it's part and parcel to the Supreme Soul.
Because it is part and parcel of the Supreme Soul. The role of any part is to serve the whole. What is the function of my hand?
Things up, lift.
To serve the body.
To serve the body. The hand puts food into the mouth, which goes into the stomach. The hand, cleanses the body, combs the hair, for all of you at least. That hand performs different. But if the hand says, I want to enjoy separate from the body, and the hand tries to walk over there, does it have any function then?
It actually negatively affects the body.
Well, that's a different point. But the hand itself experiences
No, nothing.
separate from the body? Nothing. It serves no function. So similarly, the spirit soul, when it is connected to the Supreme Lord, that is when the spirit soul is in its natural position. Just as when the fish is in water, it is in its natural position. When it is out of water, it is in its unnatural position. Very simple. Black and white. Okay? So, unalloyed devotion. All knowledge should culminate in this understanding. Sometimes we think, I want to acquire this knowledge and that knowledge, and the material. If I knew what the lottery numbers were going to be tomorrow, imagine how perfect my life would be. If I knew, what was going to happen to me a year from now, and somebody could predict the future, that would be like perfect knowledge. Or, we have all these definitions, right? But actually, the perfection of knowledge concludes in this unalloyed devotion to Krishna, because that is the eternal state of the soul, and that which gives perfect happiness. So the rest of these speak about how to come to that point of knowledge. But very importantly, things like humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, if they're not connected to unalloyed devotion to Krishna, they won't bring about the ultimate result, the desired result. So we read these: humility in service, pridelessness in service, non-violence in service, tolerance in service, because they must be connected. Someone might be able to be very tolerant. I can sit in a bucket of ice water and not shiver. That's tolerance. But is that going to advance anything beyond my body consciousness? No. Right? So while these are all good qualities, even on a material platform, they have the full purpose when they're related to the soul. And that's why Prabhupada opens his purport by saying, this is not the activities of the kshetra, of the body. These are not processes for understanding bodily knowledge. This is process for transcendental knowledge. And so, how do all of these qualities then develop? What is the means, the easiest way to develop all of these qualities?
Devotional service.
Devotional service. Prabhupada says, all the good qualities of knowledge develop for one who has attained the stage of devotional service. So through bhakti, all these qualities arise, right? Okay. Now, what is the means of coming to this knowledge? As we heard just a minute ago, you can say the second most important,
Accepting the spiritual master.
accepting a spiritual master. Okay? And why is that so important?
Because the spiritual master is the one who bona fide, in the most bona fide way takes you back to the Godhead.
Okay. Yes. What else? What are else important functions of the spiritual master?
You want to gain knowledge, you have to learn from someone, and the spiritual master teaches you how to develop these things. Devotional service there.
Yes. So, where have we acquired all of our knowledge in life? Where did we acquire how to learn how to drive a car? From a teacher. Where did we learn 2 plus 2?
From a teacher.
Where did everything we learn from some teacher, right? So ultimately, to learn is transcendental knowledge. Krishna is saying one should approach a bona fide spiritual master. That's a very powerful and important step in our process, right? Okay. So let us discuss humility. Boy, it's such a big topic. So what is humility? What does it mean to you?
Being nice to others and being humble.
Okay, being nice to others.
Placing everybody else ahead of us.
So pleasing others ahead of us. That's humility. What else does it keep going?
Don't be self-centered. Like, it's not all about you. It's about pleasing a devotee, which pleases Krishna in the bargain. So,
Okay.
be focused on that rather than trying to see what you can get out of it.
Okay.
Understanding that we are not the doers too.
Huh?
Understanding we are not the doers. What qualification do we have?
Okay, understanding that we are not the doers. Who are we? Okay. What else? Any other concepts of humility?
It's kind of like a process of giving gratitude and reverence to the good within the compartmentalized parts of being, a soul within the field, like if I'm healthy, I have a home, I have this, I have that, but those things are just being loaned to me in this form, in this time. So to be humble and know that those things are there is to be more like grateful for them rather, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
So in some ways I can, recognizing we are not really the owners or proprietors, that we have been given whatever we have.
right.
It takes a humble disposition. Any other ideas, or maybe I'll ask the other way. What is not humility?
Pride.
Pride,
False
Ego.
ego,
Sense of proprietorship over,
sense of proprietorship over anything,
greed.
greed,
I, me, mine.
I, me, mine. Yeah. Sometimes we confuse humility with another quality. Humility.
Yeah.
What do we sometimes get confused on humility as being someone who
Lack
has,
of self-esteem.
yes, low self-esteem. Low self-esteem is not humility. Humility is I am just this fallen, useless piece of. That is not humility. Humility, there are many angles of definition. Srila Prabhupada presented many different understandings. In summation, it says, to have an accurate understanding of who I am. That's humility. Not to have an exaggerated understanding of who I am. That is
Ego.
ego. Right? That's ego. Somebody thinks they're great. I'm not that great. But to have an accurate understanding of who I am is one, sort of aspect of humility. Right? So we know we are a tiny infinitesimal spark of the Supreme Lord, the magnificent, unlimitedly opulent, most loving Supreme Lord. Right? But my position is, no, I'm a tiny spark. A tiny spark in fire, is it proud of its ability to give heat and light?
No.
It knows. I am just a tiny spark. I have limited heat and light I can give. But the spark also has one point of pride. I am part of this great fire. So the living entity, the spirit soul, one understands, yes, I'm a tiny infinitesimal spark of the Supreme Lord. But my ability, my potency comes in connection with the Supreme Lord, not in any other way. So when I'm connected with the Supreme Lord, yes, some of great abilities are there, maybe. But one understands, where is the source of that great ability? It comes from the Supreme Lord. So having this very, we say, accurate, truthful understanding of one's position. So Prabhupada says here, one of the qualities of humility, what is the quality he says? Because humility means what?
One should not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others.
So the devotee is not anxious to have the honor of others. What is the devotee anxious for? Glorifying Krishna and his devotees. He doesn't want glorification of him or herself. He wants glorification of Krishna and his loving devotees. So when one is humble, they're not eager for this satisfaction of being honored by others. Many times, particularly in our close relationships, often our closest relationships, spouses, parents, siblings, a lack of humility leads to conflict. Why?
Ego kicks in.
We have some expectation of honor. I was not treated the way I deserve to be treated. And thus, there is some turmoil. But if one has no expectation, then is there any scope to be disappointed?
No.
As soon as there is expectation, there will be potential, and we can say high potential for being disappointed. And thus, dissatisfaction in the heart. Okay? But as soon as one has the devotee thinks Krishna is to be glorified. His devotees are to be glorified. There's no need. So one aspect of humility. But Prabhupada says the material conception of life makes us very eager to receive honor from others. Right? All of material society, social norms, they're set up around how to gain the adoration of others. We want so many things, not for our own enjoyment, just so that others will think highly of us. How many things in our life, in our duration, we've experienced? We went after things simply to gain the adoration of others. So this bodily conception, this Kshetra conception, it perpetuates that. But when one takes a humble position, knowing I'm not this I am spirit soul, then the process of knowledge can be taken. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, what is the result of being humble? What is the result of being humble?
You get closer to God.
You get closer to Krishna.
You lose your ego.
You lose your ego.
Purify ourselves.
Purify ourselves. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu specifically says what happens when one is humble?
Cleanliness of the heart. Purifying.
Purifies the heart. And one can think to the third verse of Shikshashtakam. Boy, we need to study Shikshashtakam prayers now. Kirtanaya Sadahari. When one is humble, one is able to chant the holy names of the Lord constantly. Tunadapi Sunichena. One is more
Humble than a blade of grass.
humble than a blade of grass. How humble is a blade of grass? When you step on a blade of grass, does it object?
It doesn't.
It gives itself in service to your foot, to cushion the blow of your foot. And as soon as you remove your step, what happens to that blade of grass? Stands back up, waiting for another. The blade of grass, very, very humble. Of course, this is symbolic. It is not meaning we should wait to let someone step on us and then sit. This is metaphorical. That the blade of grass is very humble. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, tolerant in a tree. We see tolerance in this verse also, right? The fourth quality. How tolerant is a tree? If you go to the mango tree and you say, mango tree, you're very ugly, will it still give you a mango? It will. If you kick the mango tree, will it kick you back?
Your leg will get hurt.
It's very, very tolerant. Right? Tolerant like a tree. The tree is so tolerant, even if you cut its limb off, it'll give you heat if you put it in fire. It will give you shade if you speak even harshly about it. Again, this is a metaphor. Understanding tolerance, right? The tree is very, very tolerant living entity. Of course, the tree is forced to be tolerant by its conditioned state, but the point is that the devotee finds great tolerance. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Amanina Manadena.
Honor the unhonorable.
Quite honor the unhonorable. The offering respects to everyone. Everyone. Not picking and choosing. Often we pick and choose. But at the same time, huh?
Not expecting.
I can't hear through the mask.
Not expecting respect.
Not expecting respect in return. Offering respects to all, but not expecting in return. Amanina manadena. So when one is humble like a blade of grass, tolerant like a tree, offering respects to all, but not expecting any in return, then one can kirtaniya sadahari, chant the holy names of the Lord constantly. So if we are struggling to chant the holy names of the Lord, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us the formula. This is the formula. Finding means to be.
So, isn't
Yes.
this the first verse of Shikshashtakam?
Third.
Third? Okay.
First verse glorifies the 7 glories of the holy names, the benedictions and the potencies of the holy name. So, this humility becomes a very important part of our devotional service. Because if we don't accept the position that I am a servant of Krishna, then my only other option is I am a servant of my own senses. I have to serve somebody. I have no choice. That is the nature of the soul, is to serve. So my only question is not if to serve, only whom to serve. And with humility, one can understand, yes, I am a tiny spark. But one can be very proud that they are associated with somebody extraordinary, the Supreme Lord. And pride is not in their own ability, but in the magnanimous and wonderful qualities of the Supreme Lord. So what are any good examples of humility you see in Shastra, or something you see that there's ways that we can now put some tangible understanding to humility?
Example?
Yeah. That we see in different Shastra. Anywhere? I'll give one to start. Srila Prabhupada. He is, in many ways, the personification of humility. He is such an extraordinary personality. Yet he was so humble, and one of his most revealing, confidential insights into the core of his heart is the Markina Bhagavatam. This is a poem that he wrote in a diary. When you write in a diary, you don't mean to write it for public consumption. When you write in a book, it's meant to be read. But a diary is a personal reflection. And so this very personal reflection, as he's sitting in the port in the Boston Harbor, he writes these extraordinary verses in Bengali. He quotes some Sanskrit verses. But you'll see extraordinary humility when he speaks about, Krishna. It's a prayer to Krishna. I have no knowledge, he says. Now, by his peers in India, he had been given the title Bhakti Vedanta, which means he was the master of Vedanta, of Shastra. That was given by his peers. Peers are not so quick to give titles to their peers, right? Because they're always in competition for honor. Right? So peers don't give titles like this so easily. But he was such an extraordinary scholar and so widely recognized for his scholarship that he was given the title Bhakti Vedanta. Yet, did he go around thinking, yes, I am the master of Shastra, I am Bhakti Vedanta? Did he have it monogrammed on his kurta? In this poem he writes, Krishna, I have no knowledge. He says, I have no power to make them understand the science of Krishna consciousness. I have no power, no ability. But if you desire to make it happen, it will happen. Of course, I'm paraphrasing here, I'm not quoting directly. He says, if you desire to make it happen, it'll happen. Then Prabhupada has such a humility. He says, you make me a success or failure as you like. How many of us have gone to Krishna and say, you make me a failure, no problem? We pray for success. But nobody says, Krishna, you make me a failure or success as you like. Prabhupada knew who is the real doer. This was Krishna's plan to come to the West, given through Guru Parampara to him by his spiritual master. So he had no misconception that he was this great, prophet who was going to save the world. He knew he was simply serving. Make me a success or a failure. I have no knowledge. And he says to Krishna, I am a puppet in your hands. You make me dance. Make me dance as you like. Oh Lord, make me dance. Wow. That is humility. And again, this was written in his diary, his deepest inner reflections. And Srila Prabhupada's humility knew no bounds. So extraordinary. And that is why one of the reasons you see extraordinary success. Because Krishna reciprocates with this quality of humility. When Prabhupada had thousands of disciples, he simply saw himself as a menial servant to his spiritual master. All the results were in front of him. And he wrote, or he felt, he spoke. Simple servant. And there's one purport we were reading recently that really summed up to me Prabhupada himself. Of course, this is Srila Prabhupada writing. And he said, when one is fully qualified, yet is humble and gentle. That's the hard part. When one is fully qualified, yet still humble. If I don't know how to play tennis, it's easy to be humble in tennis. It's easy. I don't know. I'm a fool. If I don't know something, it's not so hard to be humble. When one is fully qualified, yet humble, that's the ultimate achievement of humility. So, there are anyone else want to share any other pastimes of humility? Yeah?
It's so many. First of all, in our present day scenario, when we see so many Guru Maharajas, all of them, they are so much humble at heart, despite the fact that they've got so much, they are fully qualified as Goswamis. They are living such a austere life and everything, and then they are glorified by their disciples during Vyas Puja. But at the same time, that is so that can, any ordinary person, how much of pride it can bring in from anyone. But they accept that and they pass it on to the Guru Parampara, and they are able to maintain that sense of humility. And then also Sanatan Goswami, Rup Goswami, when they met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for the first time, they actually, prime ministers and the finance ministers, such high positions, having so much of wealth and everything, they just discarded everything and came, and then they said, they had straw in their, between the teeth, and they said, we are surrendered completely to you, you please instruct. So it's hard, as you said, it's easy to give up or say become humble when you don't have anything but at that position.
That interaction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with the Rupa and Sanatana Goswami at Ramkeli is really an amazing experience. There's humility on many different angles of that pastime. the humility of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami that they approached Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which was so deep and so real. See, often we can speak humility. Oh, I'm your fallen servant. I am the servant of the servant of the servant. You know, it's easy to speak, but what matters is what's inside.
What do you feel from within
Yeah.
Right?
and not
You
show
can
something?
offer obeisances and thinking, why do I have to do this? Why do it? So physically, externally, I mean it. But what matters is what's in the core of the heart. But when Rupa and Sanatana Goswami were expressing their humility, it was so revealing of the core of the heart. It was bringing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to tears. He told them, stop, you're breaking my heart with your humility. Because it was so profound and real. And all the devotees who were seated around this tree and were watching this pastime, Rupa and Sanatana Goswami were experiencing extraordinary mercy from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Very rare and special blessings from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, but the devotees were in ecstasy, seeing these two living entities, these two great devotees receiving special mercy. That takes humility, because otherwise we'll feel, why them? Why not me? Why they're getting this mercy? And we'll start to do the compare. We'll make the notes. Don't they know he didn't do this? He didn't do this. I did this. I did that. He's getting this. Is unfair. I'm not getting. But the devotees were drowning in an ocean of ecstasy, experiencing the bliss of seeing Rupa and Sanatana Goswami receive this mercy from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That is the nature of devotees. Is they are naturally humble. One doesn't need to, but in the core of the heart, they were ecstatic to see this mercy. You know, sometimes, you know, in our own hearts, you know, there is that pain. There is that pain. You know, that is lack of humility. Any other examples of humility that comes to mind?
Parikshit Maharaja, after he's sentenced to a 7-day life before he dies, and he goes to Sutta Goswami and he says, you know, I made a mistake. Can you please tell me what I need to know before I leave this body? And then it starts.
He was wrongly cursed. He could have avenged that. He took a very humble position. Said, so be it. Such is the, you know, call of the Lord. And he went to hear and inquire. And because of his humility, Shukadeva Goswami was inspired to speak at length Srimad Bhagavatam. Nice, very nice. The humility of Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur is Namacharya, the Acharya of the holy names. The gift that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving, he was the Acharya of the holy names. Yet, he would not enter into association with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally, intimately, considering himself to be unqualified. He was the most qualified. But not considering himself to be qualified. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was calling him, Haridas, come, honor Prasad. His invitation was there. The door was open. The VIP position was established. Yet he refused. Why? Out of his humility. And that humility actually pleased Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very much. And Haridas Thakur was enjoying, watching all the devotees enjoy prasadam with the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Again, there was not a bitterness, a sense of, why not me? That is humility. King Prataparudra. So desperate and eager to serve, he is willing to give up his whole kingdom. He approached Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, changing his dress and massaging the feet. Performed great service in a mood of humility. Sweeping the streets as a king, a tradition that goes still today because of this great action of humility. So when one has qualification yet remains humble, that is the very glorious nature. So we have many, 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 many role models of great devotees who have taken a humble position and achieved great success in devotional service. So when we hear and study those, our mood should be how to follow in their footsteps. How to follow that mood. And this mood of following itself is painful. It's painful to the ego. Right? I want to do something. I shouldn't do it. But I still want to do it. It's painful. Due to lack of humility.
Question here. I mean, if I try to relate it down to this material world in our day-to-day activity, humility is, yes, difficult to practice, but if you are practicing, would it not be downplaying yourself in this material world? You may have some ideas, but you would not want to push them through just because. And I'm carrying my spiritual life into my material life, because humility is not like an on-off switch. That whenever I'm doing any spiritual work, I turn it on and turn it off when in the material world. So how do I carry it into the material world?
I'm going to relate that to a spiritual top activity, just for points of emphasis. Humility does not mean, okay, I'm not going to put forth, use my whatever skills I have in the service of Krishna. An example will be given, Mataji, give a class. No, I'm unqualified. That's not humility. That's not understanding the process. The process is to understand that we're simply repeating what Guru Parampara has said. Prabhupada was very innovative, expert in his preaching. He wrote books. You can say, how is that humble? He is presenting himself as a scholar and he's writing all these books. He knew that Krishna himself is writing these purports. That was his understanding. He opened 108 temples around the world. And that's very prideful that he's, planting a flag in all these different countries. He understood the core of his heart. Who is the doer? So that's why Krishna tells Arjuna that you use your expertise and use it to your fullest ability and potential as a service to me, as an instrument in my plan. You be an instrument in my plan. A sharp knife in the hands of a surgeon is not proud of its sharpness, but that knife is used to perform a great operation. So, whatever ability we have, we should use it to the fullest. But understand where that ability came from. Understand who is the controller and the beneficiary of that ability. So humility doesn't mean I have some great skill, but I'm not going to use it because I don't want to show off. That's not humility. I can say that's ignorance. I would actually use a harsher word for that, but I won't, in the respect of all of these wonderful assembled devotees. But that is not humility. Humility is doing whatever one is capable of doing to the fullest for the pleasure of Krishna, for the pleasure of Guru, with firm understanding who is doing, who is the enabler, and appreciation that this is simply a gift that Krishna has given. Best use it for his service and not be irresponsible in using that for some other means. That's humility. Humility doesn't mean staying in the background. That's easy to be humble. Harder to be humble, doing something and understanding and remembering, as Prabhupada said, fully qualified. Right? So Krishna wants us to use whatever ability we have. So if in the office place we have an opportunity to do some great work, we should do so. Krishna has given us whatever intelligence, ability, perseverance, tenacity, energy, whatever it is. We should use it. But never lose sight. Don't think, oh, my intelligence, I am so... No, I know where it's coming from. So I'm going to use it for Krishna in his service. And when the great results come, know why they came. Not because of I. They came because Krishna wanted them. He simply used me as an instrument in his plan. An instrument has no pride. A record player, when it is broadcasting Beethoven, isn't proud, wow, what great music I made. It's simply a medium to broadcast this great composer. Similarly, the devotee knows there is simply a medium to transmit what is common in Guru Parampara in whatever form. So don't let humility be a reason to be lazy. I'm not going to do. No. But in exercising that, that's why we have to follow instructions. Why? Because if we follow our own ideas, we can veer off. Unless one is so perfect. But even at the most perfected stage, actually one has these intense ability to follow. And not doing it, but actually they have a strong desire to. They hanker for it because they're very fearful of the alternative. Very fearful of the alternative. Is that okay, Boo?
Thank you, Guru.
Any other comments or questions on this?
If we are not using our abilities that way, can we be considered as miser or what? Miser?
Yeah. Yeah. Because we have some ability Krishna has gifted us and we're not using it. That's a wasted opportunity. Right? So one is not anxious to display their abilities. One is confident that Krishna is sitting in the heart and will arrange for the opportunities to serve. Arjuna was not anxious to display his abilities on the battlefield. He was the world's most glorious warrior. He was not going to lose that battle in any condition. But he was not anxious to display his abilities. But when Krishna said, you fight, Krishe vachanam tava, I am prepared to follow. So that is the disposition one should have. One is not anxious to display, but one is ready to serve when asked. And it takes great, again, humility to know Krishna will arrange. When I think I am the doer, I am the enabler. This isn't happening and it should be happening. Krishna will ordain. So we balance both sides. Yes.
So then on the
Other
opposite
side.
side,
Yes.
right, we hear, to be greedy for service. like not material greed, but greedy for service? And then how do you balance that with humility? Like, you want to do more like service and stuff in this, but is that also just mercy? Same, whether you get service or you don't get service.
How does wanting to do more service lead to not being humble? Only if one develops the idea, look at me, I'm doing a lot of service. I'm doing more service than this person. Why is this person not doing service? I'm doing this. Yes, and that is the antithesis of what one wants to do. One instead should be extraordinarily grateful. I have no idea why, I have no qualification, but for some reason Krishna is allowing me to do some service. Krishna, thank you, you're very kind. I'm the least qualified of all the people. For some reason you have engaged this empty can to do some service for you. Wow, thank you. That should be our mood. Krishna has unlimited servants. He doesn't need us. But out of his love and compassion for us, he allows us to render service. He allows us to participate. But don't think for a second he needs us. But he definitely wants us. Two different things. So if one wants to render lots of service, that's great. But when one renders service, understand, wow, I'm fortunate. I'm very fortunate to have some opportunity to render service. One should not become, look at me, I did this, let me give you my resume of services I do. That is not the right consciousness. And in the mood of service, being greedy for service, the greed should be for the pleasure of Krishna. Sometimes we get into this, I want to do this service, I want to do that service, not what service will please Krishna the most. Then we compete. Takes a very humble position when two people are making chapatis and they both want to make them for Krishna. One says, they make better than me, let me assist them in service. That's the mood. Because the mood is pleasure of Krishna, not pleasure of myself in the service. Again, it takes the quality of humility. So eagerness is very important. But don't mistake eagerness for lack of humility. Prabhupada was so eager, so enthusiastic, so determined. He was also confident, He was sitting in a park bench. One stranger asked him, how many temples do you have? He said 108. But they are yet to come. Krishna is going to bring them. On one hand, that's confident. But he wasn't confident in his ability. He was confident in Krishna. He was confident in Krishna. That's a bold statement. Bold. But he was confident in Krishna, not himself. So humility, again, isn't low self-esteem. It's great confidence. Rupa Goswami says, Nishchayan, one should be confident, but not confident in oneself, confident in Krishna. That is the mood of humility. And that is why we have to study the activities of our past acharyas, because they exemplify this mood which we can try to inculcate in our own consciousness and bring out in our own process of devotional service. And we should be able to diagnose, I was not very humble in that situation. It's good. Diagnose it. Analyze it. And learn from it. So the next time, you can remind yourselves. But as soon as you remind yourselves part and parcel, infinitesimal spark, it brings us back. It's not so complicated. Not so complicated. But sometimes hard to practice. But by good chanting, as Prabhupada said, by the engagement in devotional service, these qualities emerge. Any other questions?
Well, there's one thing, this word humility and this word humble, they remind me of the word hummus, and not the stuff you eat, but the earth itself.
Ah,
You know, when you have very rich soil,
yeah.
and the soil is never prideful. The soil is just a soil.
Hmm. Yeah. It
It's
gives.
just this ground,
Yeah.
but it brings everything.
It gives life.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. And it has no expectation. That's a nice connection to this word. We can speak for weeks and weeks about humility. It's a very important process in devotional service. And remember, it matters what's in here, the core of the heart. That is what we want to try to make home. Yeah, speaking is good, actions are good, they're important. But only you know what's in the core of the heart. And Paramatma. So pray to Krishna that we can bring about, because by humility one can kirtaniya sadhari, be constantly engaged in devotional service. That's why Krishna says, constant and unalloyed devotional service.
So you saying that even words, of course, can be may not mean anything much, but actions also may not be reflective of what is in the heart, correct?
Of
So
course.
the words, actions is basically what's happening in your heart.
Yeah.
What's all humility all about?
Yeah, because I can go and offer obeisances and be chastising that person, what a rascal, fool, and person in my heart,
In your heart.
right? But my actions would show.
But Prabhu,
humility.
if you display that kind of attitude or behavior, not you, but if someone like does this, pay obeisances, and then in their mind speak all negative and bad about them, one day or the other, won't the true color show out?
Of course. It always comes out in some actions.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that the Supreme, he will project it out and put him in his place, saying, "Yeah, this is what your mind is."
As Prabhupada said, a fool is revealed when he opens his mouth.
Yeah.
Ultimately, yes, it will come out. But my point is, sometimes we are quick to observe, these natures. And it doesn't matter. We should only observe ourselves anyways. And it doesn't mean, don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean we shouldn't speak humbly or we shouldn't act humbly. That's not my point. My point is we should do those two to bring the core of the heart to the position. But yes, ultimately, you'll see, again, very simple, inability to follow. Why? Inability, unwillingness.
And that kind of person will not be able to progress in spiritual life at all, right?
No, you'll see when there are difficulties, it's always associated with lack of humility. But we may see progress externally. That's always a challenge. But humility always, again, anyways, we should focus on our own. What is the real understanding of I am an infinitesimal spark of the Supreme Lord? Yes, I may have great abilities, whatever they may be, but it is simply being given by the Supreme Lord. Krishna has many, many better servants, but somehow has engaged me in the service. I'll do it enthusiastically, as best I can, given with the ability I have. And actually, humility also breeds great confidence.
How?
How? Because when I know I'm an infinitesimal spark of Krishna, and Krishna is given some ability to do something, it's going to happen according to Krishna's plan. I'm confident in one thing, Krishna's plan will succeed. So I'm not worried about whether it's going to work or not, I do the best I can, but it's Krishna's issue. Krishna will make it happen. So now I'm comfortable, I'm confident. I know one thing, Krishna's plan will prevail, not mine. Right?
Nothing in front
But
of that.
if I'm not humble, then I'll think my plan will prevail. And I'll get slapped over and over again because my plan won't prevail. It may once in a while, but more often than not,
God.
and it just keeps happening. So, but when we're humble, Prabhupada was confident, bold. He was not timid or scared ever. He was fearless because he was humble. He knew Krishna can do anything and everything. So actually humility also leads to this, this position. So that's why it's important. Humility is not low self-esteem. I can't do anything. I'm not good. No, that's not humility. Having an accurate understanding of who I am. That's how we open the book. An accurate understanding.
The moment we attach our definition of success or failure, that's the time when everything goes wrong.
Yes. That is the ultimate. As soon as we attach to Krishna's plan, everything is perfect. Everything is perfect. We're going to have Rath Yatra in 2 days. If it's torrential downpour and thunderstorms, it's perfect. Why? That's what Krishna wants. That's what Krishna wants. It's perfect. If whatever happens, as long as I was not lazy thinking, oh, Krishna's going to do everything, I'm humble. He'll do it all. That's not humble.
You have to do your part.
You have to do your part. You have to be your part. We do our part to the best of our ability. And then whatever Krishna wants will happen and manifest. Then there is no stress, no anxiety. Humility is very liberating. It's very liberating. Lack of humility is debilitating. Very debilitating. Humility is strength. Strength. That's why they say pride comes before the
No.
So we covered one of the 20. I promise we'll not take 19 weeks to cover the next 19. But this is a very important one. And it's the anchor of these qualities. But again, the most important, pure devotional service, which we learn by approaching, Prabhupada says, the bona fide spiritual master. That is the okay. Any other comments? Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai. Vaishnava Vrinda ki.